Welcome friends, we have a new session on essential skills for teaching. Skill of questioning. In the earlier session on teaching skills, we have found that an array of skills are necessary for effective teaching, but some skills get prominence over the others due to their extensive use in the day-to-day teaching activity. Such skills are often called as core teaching skills. Of these, 5 skills are necessary for all teachers, irrespective of their subject, the school, or maturity of students. These are the skill of questioning, response management, reinforcement, explaining, and stimulus variation. Without these skills, a teacher is likely to fail. Let us examine each of these 5 core skills. Questioning plays an important role in teaching learning. It is one of the cornerstones of teaching learning. Whatever information we know can be conceived as answers to 5 W's: what, why, when, where, who, and one H, that is how. Thus, questioning is one of the critical skills usable in teaching any subject at any level. Purpose of questioning. Question can be asked to serve various purposes. The purpose could be to motivate students, obtain and sustain people's attention and make them mentally alert, stimulate thinking, reasoning, and seeking solution to problems, help students recall what they already know, link present knowledge with the old, and encourage the practice of reflection. Questions encourage student participation in discussion, assess the extent of students' understanding of what is being taught, help students evaluate themselves, and promote students' involvement in addition to revising the lesson. Classification of questions. Questions that teachers ask in class are classified based on the level of thinking required from students to answer them and the purpose for which they are asked. Level of questions. Questions are structured differently with varying levels of instructions. Broadly, there are 3 levels of questions, namely lower order questions, middle order questions, and higher order questions. Lower order questions are memory level questions requiring the student to recall from their memory using the relevant cues in the question. This level is important because memory gives the building blocks for higher level questions and their answers. Middle level questions demand student to interpret the acquired information. They cover the objectives of understanding and application in Bloom's taxonomy. Understanding as an objective requires thinking to transform, interpret, or extrapolate what is in mind to some other form. Application is the use of the acquired knowledge in a new situation. This level is highly important because the utility criterion for any learning is the ability of learner to transfer formal knowledge into real life situations. Higher order questions involve higher order thinking. Here, students have to reason, analyze problems, imagine, show a creative touch, or judge. The objectives, namely analysis, synthesis, and evaluation in Bloom's taxonomy, are covered by this level. Analysis is defined as breaking down of information or problem into its parts. This helps to make the relation among parts evident. Such questions will make students compare, contrast, and answer to the questions of what, if, and why. Synthesis is putting together information to form a whole. Synthesis objective is tested through questions such as what is the relationship between 2 or more. Evaluation is the highest objective in cognitive domain. Here, student has to test logical accuracy and consistency of information and judge the information in terms of accepted standards. The importance of higher order questions is that The creative aspect of education can be measured only by them. Types of questions. According to the purpose, questions can be of 4 types. 1. Introductory questions. 2. Developing questions. 3. Recapitulatory questions. 4. Evaluating questions. Introductory questions, which are generally asked at the beginning of a lesson, are useful to test the previous knowledge of students, link new knowledge with already existing knowledge, and motivate the students and arouse their curiosity. Developing questions forms the backbone of a lesson. They are used to develop a particular line of thought, help students discover facts for themselves, focus students' attention on important points, and formulate generalizations in an inductive way. Here, the focus is not on checking student knowledge, but make them discover and reach at right generalizations. Generally, recapitulatory questions come at the end of a lesson. Such questions help teacher to know whether students have achieved the instructional goals. They are helpful in and revisiting ideas already presented in the class. Repetition is necessary to anchor the ideas and reorganize them. During the class sessions, evaluating questions serves the purpose of feedback to teacher as well as to students. Feedback about effectiveness of learning and instruction gives the future direction for instruction. The components of skills in questioning. 3 important dimensions of skill in questioning are structure of questions, process of questioning, and product of questions. Structure of questions. While constructing questions, teachers have to follow certain rules. Questions should be framed using simple words. They should be grammatically correct and relevant to the topic being discussed. They must be specific and concise. At the same time, it is essential to avoid double-barreled questions which contain more than one question or concept. Suggestive questions which give hints to the desired answer. For example, is it or is not it questions. Echo questions, that is, questions that immediately follows the answer. Elliptical questions, that is, questions which are in incomplete statement form. Process of questioning. Process of questioning involves the way of asking questions. While asking questions orally, teachers must be careful of their intonation, pronunciation, and diction. There should be pause in between questions. Questions need not be repeated unnecessarily. Questions need to be distributed evenly among all the students in the class. Providing a pause in between questioning and pointing the student to answer promotes every student to think of the answer. Avoid haste and allow sufficient time for students to answer. Products of questions. Products of questions deal with people's responses to the questions. The ways to deal with partly right answer, incomplete answer, and wrong but intelligent answers are dealt in detail under the skill of probing questions. Skill of probing questions. Going deep into students' answer by asking a series of questions is a technique that teachers use to deal with student responses. This is called as probing questioning. The following are the possible student responses to questions and desirable teacher behavior to deal with them. If the student gives no responses to a well structured and well represented question, check the student's attention. All right answers are to be accepted and appreciated. Sometimes the teacher can repeat the answer with the necessary modification. Reject all wrong answers. Say the answer is wrong. No sarcastic comment is to be made on wrong answer. Analyze why the answer is wrong. If necessary, give the student an opportunity to correct the response by providing appropriate cues. Remember, mischievous answers are to be dealt sternly with. Wrong but intelligent answers must be analyzed. Restructuring the question may help students draw the desired answer. Skill of probing questioning involves management of student responses. For this, techniques like prompting, eliciting further information, refocusing, asking critical awareness questions, and redirection of questions can be used. When students give wrong or partially correct response, they need to be led to correct response. They need also to be made aware why the answer was wrong. Further, even for right answers, students be made to examine the answer from various viewpoints. In addition, probing increases students' participation and motivation. Prompting. Prompting is the techniques used by the teacher to help students who give no answer or wrong answer or incomplete or partial answers. Prompting leads the students to right response. For this, a series of questions, verbal, extraverbal and non-verbal cues can be used. Cues must be corresponding to the student's age and experience, logical consistency of the response and the desired response. Prompting is recommended because it makes the student answer the question. It gives a feeling of emotional security to the student. This in turn gives a sense of accomplishment and participation, thus enhancing self-image. Seeking further information. Asking for further information regarding a partially right response helps teacher to know whether student really knows the answer or is merely parroting. It reveals the extent and level of understanding the student possesses about the answer. Questions such as, can you cite an example, or will you state it more clearly, or will you elaborate, are asked to seek further information from students. Refocusing. Here, teacher relates the student's right answer to something they already possess. Refocusing helps students to attain new and broader perspective of the information they already was possessing as well as present information. It stimulates thinking for on the topic. For example, if a student makes a response that X is so and so, the teacher may refocus the idea by asking in what way X is related to Y, or he may ask in what way X is different from Y. Redirection. Redirection of partially answered and unanswered questions gives an opportunity for more students to participate in answering a question. Redirection enhances classroom interaction. Prompts are preferable to redirection of the same questions to different pupils. Increasing critical awareness. Increasing critical awareness enhances the level of understanding of the subject matter from memory level through middle to higher order thinking, involving analysis, synthesis and evaluation. This stimulates students to think beyond what they already know. This is one of the ways to cater to the needs of high ability and gifted students. Skill of reinforcement. Reinforcement is one of the major conditions of learning. Reinforcement is any event that is given as a consequence of a response so as to increase the rate of response. Reinforcers are those events that enhance the rate of right response. Non-reinforced behaviors tend to become extinct. Reinforcement use feedback principle for response modification. Students want to know whether they are right or wrong. Students desire social approval. In addition to make learning stronger, reinforcement helps secure attention and motivate students. Skill of reinforcement involves using more and more positive reinforcers and less negative reinforcers. The components of the reinforcement skill are the following. Positive verbal reinforcers. Using words such as good, very good, right, correct, fine, well done, excellent, keep it up, carry on, go ahead and the like is an approval of right response. To encourage students, teachers can also use student ideas, students' words in the classroom, or repeat students' definition. Care must be taken to prevent such acts from becoming artificial and heartless by frequent use. One must also avoid such words from being part of mannerism. Positive non-verbal reinforcers. Here, instead of words, teacher uses gestures and other actions to give positive feedback to students. Usual methods are nodding in approval, smiling, moving nearer to student, writing people's answers on the blackboard, and giving a friendly look at the student. The advantage is that it looks more natural than verbal reinforcers and can be used without losing the flow of communication. Non-verbal reinforcers also can become a mannerism which distract the student's attention. Negative verbal reinforcers. Though it is assumed that negative reinforcers strengthen behaviors, in practice words like wrong, no, foolish, nonsense, etc. have acquired the quality of punishment. Hence, negative verbal reinforcers must be judiciously used. Negative non-verbal reinforcers. Negative non-verbal reinforcers such as frowning, widening the eyes, nodding head sideways, steeping the lips, winking the eyes, moving away from the student are more helpful than negative verbal reinforcers in promoting desirable responses. They also elicit more student-friendly atmosphere than their verbal counterparts. But care must be taken to prevent them from becoming mannerisms that disrupt rapport with students. Extraverbal reinforcers. Extraverbal reinforcers involve humming sounds, clapping sound, tapping fingers, etc. But care must be taken to prevent them from becoming mannerisms. Repeating and rephrasing people's responses is a way adopted by teachers to give positive reinforcement to students. A word of caution. Teachers need to take effort to encourage all students instead of attending a few. Don't allow some students to have a feeling of neglect. Reinforcement be given immediately after desired response. Use wide range of strategies to reinforce than restricting to a few. Don't allow reinforcers to lose its natural touch. Don't allow student behaviors to grow contingent on reinforcement. Students must learn to learn independent of teachers. Token reinforcements such as medals, prizes, citations available only to a few be rarely used. Use of student name while reinforcing is a good practice. Skill of stimulus variation. Attention is an essential condition for effective learning. Attention tends to shift from one stimulus to another. It cannot be focused on a single stimulus for a very long duration. Stimulus variation is a deliberate change in attention producing behavior by teacher in order to draw attention and keep students at maximum attention level. Changing stimuli in environment attract and focus students' attention. Intense stimuli, contrast, movement and self-activity are some factors that affect the student attention. Intense stimuli such as louder sounds are attention catching, but their effect decreases with the duration. Contrast in stimuli, that is stimuli that stand out from the environment, and sudden change in stimuli attract attention. Moving objects attracts attention than stable objects. Self-activity of students than teachers' activity helps sustain attention. Personal behavior of teacher such as being enthusiastic, energetic, expressive, warm, etc. are attention compelling. Use of audiovisual aids help sustain attention. Components of the stimulus variation. Teacher movement. Teacher should not stand at one place continuously while teaching. Meaningful movement within classroom draws and maintains students' attention. It brings in a feeling that teacher is supervising student activity. Aimless wandering and unnecessary movements will, however, distract attention. Teacher gesture. Movements of head, hand and eye and facial expressions communicate a lot. They perform functions like directing attention, showing shape, size and movement of the object and expressing emotions. Change in speech pattern. Voice without variation is monotonous. Sudden and radical changes in tone, volume or speed are attention catching. Speed refers to rate of vibrations of voice cords during speech. Volume is the loudness of speech. Proper pitch for words and phrases is highly essential for effective communication. Change in speech pattern needs to be appropriate and logical. Change in sensory focus. In a classroom communication, change in sensory focus can be brought about by shifting from listening to observing, reading to writing, speaking to doing, and blackboard work to demonstration. Change in sensory focus is of three types. 1. Oral visual. Change from verbal stimulus to visual stimulus and vice versa. Oral to oral visual. And 3. Visual to oral visual. Change in interaction styles. Teachers need to shift from one style of interaction to another to sustain student attention. The possible interaction styles in a classroom are of three types. 1. Teacher-class interaction. 2. Teacher-people interaction. 3. People-people interaction. Focusing. Directing or focusing people attention purposefully at a particular point can be verbal, gestural or verbal gestural. Verbal focusing involves use of focusing words such as look at the chart, now listen, watch carefully and the like. Gestural focusing includes pointing to a certain things, looking at a particular point so as to secure student attention. Pausing. Pausing is the deliberate use of silence for a short interval. Pausing is one skill the beginning teacher fails to recognize the importance of. Pupil participation and movement. Physical participation of students in classroom is very helpful in maintaining student attention. Skill of explaining. Explaining is a skill essential for all teachers. Explanations relate a set of facts with another set of facts. An explanation is a set of related statements that establish relationship between causes and consequences. They bring out relationship among objects, phenomenon and actions. Explanations must be appropriate to the age, background, experience, knowledge and mental level of students. In the skill of explaining, there are certain desirable and undesirable teacher behaviors. The desirable teacher behaviors include use of introductory statements that draws and sustains students' attention to assimilate the ideas. Use of concluding statements present a consolidated picture of what has been explained. These help students to organize and retain the idea. Use of explaining links provide continuity to explanation. Links make explanations coherent and clear. Use of visual techniques help reduce verbalism. Defining technical words help in comprehension of any further explanation involving the concepts and terms. Covering essential points requires planning and sequencing of ideas beforehand. Questioning to test understanding ensures that students are attentive. There are some undesirable teacher behaviors that must be avoided during explanation. These are irrelevant statements or unnecessary statements. Lack of continuity in explanation could be due to improper linking of words or faulty sequencing of ideas. Lack of fluency and vague words or phrases. Now we can summarize this session. Core teaching skills discussed here were skill of questioning, response management, reinforcement, stimulus variation and explaining. Questions must be grammatically correct, relevant to the topic discussed, specific and concise. Questions presentation is to be with proper speed, pause and voice. Questions are not to be repeated unnecessarily and there must be sufficient number of questions. Skill of response management involves prompting, seeking further information, refocusing, redirection and increasing critical awareness. Teachers with skill of reinforcement use positive verbal reinforcers, positive non-verbal reinforcers, negative verbal reinforcers, negative non-verbal reinforcers, extra-verbal reinforcers, repeating and rephrasing people responses, writing people answers on the blackboard. Desirable teacher behaviors during the explanations are use of introductory statements, use of concluding statements, use of explaining links, use of visual techniques, defining technical words, covering essential points, questioning to test understanding, and teachers must avoid irrelevant statements, lack of continuity, lack of fluency, vague words or phrases during explanation. Skill of stimulus variation like teacher movement, teacher gesture, change in speech pattern, change in sensory focus, change in interaction styles, focusing verbal or gestural, posing and people participation help attract and maintain student attention. Now you do the following works. Take a topic of your choice and prepare 3 questions each at different levels and for introductory, developmental, recapitulatory and evaluative purposes. There is yet another activity. Observe a class of an experienced teacher and note down the various techniques used by the teacher for probing questions, reinforcement and stimulus variation. Now practice each of the skills, namely questioning, probing questioning, reinforcement and stimulus variation. You may refer to the following books and web resources. Micro Teaching, a Description, authored by Alan D.W. et al. And published by Stanford University Press in 1969. Becoming Better Teachers, authored by Pasi B.K. and published by Center for Advanced Study in Education, MS University of Baroda in 1976. Micro Teaching, Theory and Practice, authored by Singh L.C. et al. And published by Psychological Corporation Agra in 1987. Core Teaching Skill, a Micro Teaching Approach, authored by Jangira N.K. and Singh A. Published by NCERT New Delhi in 1982. You may also refer to the page Micro Teaching Skill Components, available at www.scribed.com. Thank you for watching this session. See you next time. Until then, bye.